Hi everybody, this is Alchemist 2, and I'm back again with another book review. I just read Sacred Geometry of the Earth, the Ancient Matrix, and Monuments and Mountains. Mark Vidler, Catherine Young, forward by Rand Flim Ath. And this book was actually written 2016, so it is relatively new. It is very interesting. It's absolutely fascinating. And of course, the first landmark that it mentions is Carnac. Why not? Because it's very, it's extremely obvious why that would be chosen as something that would be so linear and symmetrical. And it goes to say that even landmarks that do this on their own, it's not a coincidence, because it seems that nature in and of itself has a beautiful way of ordering its own visage, as to say. And of course, it speaks of pi and phi, two of the most important numbers, geometrically speaking or mathematically speaking, when you're talking about measurements, and phi is the golden ratio. And phi is in artwork, it's in fractals, it's included in architecture, the symmetry of the face, and how attractive a person will look to somebody else. Look it up. Phi is a very lofty, esoteric, high, heady concept that is very challenging for me, since I'm not mathematically minded. However, I'm fascinated by it. It's something I can't help, because I'll look at something and I think, well, that's very visually appealing. There's a reason for that. Nature likes to draw attention to itself in order to repopulate and subdue the earth, basically. And even in anthropology, the world's oldest science, female orangutans are matriarchal, and the females do all the choosing and the ordering, as well as just keeping everything straight for all the other orangutans. But not only that, they choose the most attractive mate. So facially symmetrical orangutans would probably be more appealing or alluring to a female orangutan. And I always thought that was just so interesting when I was in anthropology, which is why I still love it to this day. And it still just boggles my mind, and it makes sense why we have expression and why we have variety, because variety is the spice of life. And sacred geometry, it just speaks of iterations of triangles, isosceles triangles, and right triangles, different kinds of triangles. I don't think it mentioned squares that much. It was mainly focused on triangles. It didn't mention circumferences. I would have liked for it to have done that, but it just delineated quite literally just how straight a line throughout the ley lines are this way. And like I said before in my previous review, Hermeticism is discussed, and it was named after a man by the name of Hermes. I'm thinking Hermes was actually named after said god, but it stems from that understanding, that procedure of thought. And I'm thinking Hermeticism is actually kind of making a comeback, because people realize just how informative and deep it really is, and how many questions it's answering. And I'm thinking that Hermes was onto something. He most likely was. Unfortunately, the only thing I don't like about this book is it repeats itself. Well, as a scientific book and a book on mathematics, to make a point, it will reiterate. And that's my only real nag about the book. Despite that, it's still a very compelling read, even if you're not a math major. I love geometry. Geometry is a totally different branch of math, and I completely understand it. It makes sense to me. Excuse me, sorry, but it is only, and it has really good maps to illustrate how things are plotted due to where everything is located. Of course, it has notes and nautical miles, kilometer, Hermetica, King James Bible. Of course, it comes from the Quran, Book of Enoch. Yeah, different things are mentioned here. Angkor Wat's mentioned, which is a very ancient temple. It's been around for eons. Of course, the index. And it says that the landmarks in of themselves, the ones that aren't man-made, the ones that are so-called accidental, really aren't. Because, like I said, nature in itself has a method of just making itself very ordered, very precise, and it does this for a reason. And just to me, that's completely logical. It makes sense. Why wouldn't nature do this? And let's see. This, including the index, and my fingers are not wanting to cooperate. Excuse me. If I can get my hitchhiker thumb to work with me here. Maybe I can get my index finger. There we go. In the index. Huh. That's kind of funny. Right. 270 pages. And, of course, the books of related interest are also mentioned, but I will... I haven't read any of these. I've heard of Secrets of Ancient America. It talks about the Phoenicians. I'm not surprised because I used to watch what's his face? I can't think of his name, but he was the guy who was responsible for writing different books on masonry and whatnot. I just can't think of his name. He had a television show. His name's not coming to me. Sorry. How the World's Made. Story of Creation. I'm thinking this is similar to this one. Dimensions of Paradise. John Mitchell. It looks like John Mitchell wrote both of those. Alan Brown co-authored with How the World is Made. Atlantis Beneath the Ice. Rand Flemath wrote that with his, I'm assuming his wife, Rose Flemath. The Gobekli Tepe. Of course, if you watch Ancient Aliens, you know quite a bit about Gobekli. It's written by Andrew Collins. Secret of Ancient America. It's about the Phoenicians, Celts, and other forgotten explorers. Of course, we know that most likely the Vikings were the first. Maybe the Chinese. I don't know. It's hard to say. They're thinking that it's most likely it's a toss-up between the Phoenicians and the Celts, the Vikings, Chinese, and it's possible that maybe there were others who came from a great distance. Point of origin. Gobekli Tepe, of course, yeah, it's about cosmologies. That's by Laird Scranton. Forgotten Civilization. Or Solar Outbursts. Oh, that might be intriguing. That's by Robert M. Schock, Ph.D. Soul of Ancient Egypt. Knowing how I love Ancient Egypt, that would be another definite read. Robert Banuval and Ahmed Osman. Inner Traditions, Bear and Company. That's the publisher, and they're in Rochester, Vermont. And it's interesting, on the very back leaflet, it states that it's published using solar power. That's awesome. Of course, it says Mr. Vidler, he's an artist, designer, and carpenter who studied at Hornsey School of Art, the Polytechnic of Central London, and Bath Academy. The author of Star Mirror, he studied early history and stellar alignments of ancient monuments on 94. Catherine Young spent her childhood in Africa, Italy, and Austria before graduating from Bristol University in England. She teaches English at a school in Wiltshire. Both authors live in Bradford-on-Avon, Wiltshire, UK. And the back actually describes this much better than I ever could. I am very eloquent and verbose. However, when it comes to things like this, I'm a little ill-equipped. And I'll go ahead and read it. From continent to continent across the globe, Mark Vidler and Catherine Young reveal that order is everywhere on the earth. On remote islands, soaring summits, and level deltas, they unveil natural topographic patterns related to pi, the golden ratio, and right triangle geometry. And as the planet's design emerges, it becomes clear that this hidden order in nature decided the location of ancient monuments, the world order. Through detailed maps, Vidler and Young show how the locations of megalithic monuments reflect and enhance the natural pattern on Earth that connects its major features. Yeah, like Mount Everest, Carnac. Yeah, this actually goes on to... It connects the standing stones of Carnac in France, for example, point to the summits of Mount Everest and K2, Angkor Wat in Cambodia, on a straight line joining Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa and the tip of Cape Comorin in India. Coincidence? I think not. The authors examined the geography of many islands in each continent, including Antarctica, to show how the highest peak on each landmass falls on a line connecting coastal extremes. They revealed how circles of standing stones and man-made monuments mark intersections of these lines. They explore a connection between the Nazca lines in Peru and Amazon, Nile, and Ganges deltas, and explain how the locations of the Giza pyramids, Stonehenge, and Machu Picchu are integrated into the natural designs of Earth. As they uncover geometric patterns on the earth line by line, point by point, the authors reveal how the world's ancient monuments represent a form of transglobal communication that far predates the written world. It might even go into the web of communication that Native Americans always spoke of with spider grandmother. It might be tied into that. I'm thinking it is because... even in this form with ley lines, if you think about ley lines, I've read books on ley lines before, and I love them. And it makes just an unbelievable amount of sense. And if we could just tap into that kind of source of energy, I think we would have perpetual energy. This is a theory, and a lot of other purebred scientists and totalitarian closed-minded people think, no, you're just one of those hoity-toity, high and mighty, frou-frou, spiritual type who, no, this is actually proven. This man and woman took the time to map out each significant point to show how they are connected. And yeah, I mean, what more is there to say? There's really nothing. It's pretty much self-explanatory. But it's a very, very interesting book, and I highly recommend it to anybody who is intrigued by just how connected we are even to geometrical standpoints. And it makes me believe even more in a brilliant mind, a creator who would plot these points out, a master designer. I've always believed that, but even now, more than ever, I ascribe to that even more highly than I do. But as far as books are concerned, I would give it 3 out of 5 because, like I said, it's a little bit repetitive, and that can get a little bit boring over time, but despite that, it keeps you intrigued, it keeps you motivated to want to read more, and you want to figure out what exactly, how exactly all these points line up, quite literally. And it's a grand design. It really is something quite remarkable in and of itself, and it just makes me sit back in complete and utter astonishment in knowing this. But that's about all I have to say about sacred geometry. And to anybody else who is interested in reading it, I'm probably going to be selling this in my auction. So please come and pay for it because it's going to be gone if you don't. Until next time, live long and prosper. Ciao, Susie.